Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here today as we remember a very somber occasion and honor those friends and family members that were lost on that fateful evening of June 21st, 1977. My name is Jim Hennessy. I'm the Communications Manager with the St. John Police Force. A special welcome to all of the family members and friends that have joined us here today. Thank you so much. I know some of you traveled. Some of you came across the border from Nova Scotia as well, so you'll have to isolate for a few days when you get back home, so we appreciate the sacrifice very much. Good morning and welcome as well to our newly elected Mayor of St. John, Donna Reardon. Thank you for being here, Your Worship. Chair of the St. John Board of Police Commissioners, Mr. Edward Keys. Acting Chief of Police, Tony Hayes. Fire Chief, Kevin Clifford. City Manager John Cullen is joining us today. Thank you, sir. Members of the St. John Board of Police Commissioners are with us as well. Members of the St. John Council have joined us. Premier Blaine Higgs, thank you for being here, Mr. Premier. We appreciate that. And members of the New Brunswick Conservative Cabinet table, including Ministers Dunn and Dorothy Shepherd, are with us today as well, so thank you. Good morning and welcome to our regional mayors and councillors that have joined us, and Monsignor Brian Sheehan, who has joined us as well, and he'll be taking part in the ceremony later this morning. To begin our ceremony, we will read out the 21 names of the people lost on that fateful day on June 21st, 1977. There will be a brief pause for reflection after all the names have been read. Daniel Lee Ivois. John Coleman Guitar. Robert Joseph Odell Sr. Donette Joseph Hashi. James Randolph Macomb. Robert William Gokri. Edward Henry Mitchell. David Patrick Sear. Timothy Lionel Albert. Robert George Vautour. Timothy Kenneth Milne. Michael Anthony Blizzard. Robert Lewis Barton. Wayne Douglas Matheson. Frank Crichton Smith. Russell Leonard Shaw. Gerald E. Williams. Ivan Gary Donnelly. Walter James Whipple. James Wilson Phillips. And Gary Francis James. Gone, but certainly never forgotten. Thank you. As we continue with our ceremony at this time, I would like to welcome Chair of the St. John Board of Police Commissioners, Mr. Edward Keys, to come forward and say a few words.
Thank you very much, Jim. Honorable Blaine Higgs, Premier of New Brunswick, Ministers Dunn and Shepherd, members of the New Brunswick Legislature, Member of Parliament Wayne Long, Your Worship Mayor Donna Reardon, members of St. John Common Council, members of the St. John Board of Police Commissioners, Acting Police Chief Tony Hayes, members of the St. John Police Force, Fire Chief Kevin Clifford, members of the St. John Fire Department, City Manager John Cullen, Mayor of Grand Bay Westfield Brittany Merrifield, Monsignor Sheehan, family members of the 21 victims of the 1977 Detention Center fire, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the St. John Board of Police Commissioners, I want to thank all of you for coming to this morning's memorial plaque unveiling in honor of the 21 lives that were lost in the detention center fire 44 years ago today. On June 21st, 1977, tragedy struck as fire broke out in the St. John detention area of police headquarters, claiming the lives of 21 people. A news article covering the incident told of a dozen police officers, 6 firefighters, and an unidentified number of men who were rushed to the hospital in 6 ambulances and a dozen police cruisers. Police had trouble opening the doors of the cells, and the police information officer said heat had jammed the locks, the news article read. The deaths were all attributed to smoke inhalation. When former Mayor Don Darling first brought this issue to the Police Commission last year, we unanimously agreed that something needed to be done to recognize the lives lost that tragic evening 44 years ago. After much discussion and in consultation with Mary MacDonald, who brought this issue to Mayor Darling on behalf of the families, it was agreed a plaque in memory of the victims should be placed in City Hall to remember the men who died that day. The plaque reads, "This plaque is a memorial to 21 lives lost in a fire on June 21st, 1977 at the St. John Police Force Detention Center at City Hall. Your memories will live on forever in our hearts. Daniel Lee Evoy, John Coleman Guitar, Robert Joseph Odell Sr., Donna Joseph Hashi, James Randolph Macomb, Robert William Cokery, Edward Henry Mitchell, David Patrick Sear, Timothy Lionel Aubert, Robert George Votor, Timothy Kenneth Milne, Michael Anthony Blizzard, Robert Louis Barton, Wayne Douglas Matheson, Frank Creighton Smith, Russell Leonard Shaw, Gerald E. Williams, Ivan Gary Donnelly, Walter James Whipple, James Wilson Phillips, and Gary Francis Janes. Many of those involved in the aftermath of this tragedy are also no longer with us today. I want to thank Monsignor Sheehan, who is going to bless the memorial plaque, for being here today. Monsignor Sheehan attended at the scene that fateful night and had the difficult task, together with a member of the St. John Police Force, of notifying the family members of the loss of their loved ones. I also want to thank Mary MacDonald for her efforts, and to each of the family members of the victims who were able to be here with us today. The pain of losing a loved one never goes away, but through today's ceremony, hopefully we can ensure their memories are not forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Case. We now invite to the podium Her Worship, Mayor Donna Reardon, to say a few words.
Thank you, Jim. Honorable Blaine Higgs, special guests, and especially today to the families and friends. It's an honor to be here really at this very solemn occasion to recognize the 21 people that we've had named who've lost their lives in that tragic incident on this day in 1977. It's something that a family just can't get over this. And I hope at the end of the day that this ceremony with the recognition will help bring some closure for families as they go forward. So appreciate being asked to be here. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Your Worship. We now ask Fire Chief Kevin Clifford to come forward and say a few words on behalf of the Fire Department.
Good morning. Family and friends of those who perished in the 1977 jail fire, distinguished guests, members of the media, and obviously our elected officials. It is an honor to be here today at the Memorial Plaque Unveiling ceremony for those who lost their lives one of the darkest days in this city's history. As we gather to forever remember, I wish to offer my thanks to Mrs. Mary MacDonald for presenting the memorial plaque request to the St. John Police Commission, and I want to thank the St. John Police Commission for ensuring that indeed a memorial plaque was created and mounted in an appropriate location at City Hall. In preparing today's comments, I reviewed many of the media articles that spoke to the loss of 21 lives here in St. John 44 years ago today. I am reminded of how precious life is, and saddened to know that so many members of our community had their lives ended abruptly. Taking a look at the ages of those who passed, it's somewhere in the vicinity of 17 years old to 44 years old. So definitely lives ended abruptly. I was also reminded of the incredible loss and devastation felt by family members of the deceased. Personally, I can still recall the incredible sadness that my mother and father's close friends, Ken and Dot Milne, experienced in losing their son Timothy to the horrific tragedy. I would later work with Ken Milne, who was an officer on the St. John Fire Department Rescue Squad, and thought how emotionally difficult it must have been for Ken to continue providing fire and rescue services to our community after losing his son in such a tragic way. As we remember and memorialize those who perished on June 21st, 1977, we must remember the courage and resilience that the respective families had to persevere through in that darkness that followed June 21st. The memorial plaque is a public reminder of the lives that were shortened by tragedy, a reminder of the many of our families' pain and courage, and a reminder to this community's loss. The memorial plaque is also a reminder for all of us to be as diligent as we can be in preventing a tragedy of this magnitude from ever occurring in St. John again.
Thank you, Chief Clifford. We now invite to the podium Acting Police Force Chief Tony Hayes.
Good morning, friends, family, and guests. I'm honored and thankful to be part of today's ceremony representing the St. John Police Force and its members. 44 years ago today, the family and friends of 21 men experienced a tragic loss. The passing of time may ease the pain, but the loss never goes away. By coming together today, it allows us the opportunity to honor the memory of those who cannot be here. This plaque will ensure that we never forget the fathers, sons, and brothers who are no longer with us. It has been said that your memory continues as long as someone says your name, and that is what we have come here to do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hayes. Since work began on this memorial, we're sad today that the lady who began this conversation and the effort to memorialize the names of those lost can't be with us. But Mary MacDonald, she always finds a way. She's in Nova Scotia with current COVID protocols, so she was unable to join us. So at this time, we direct your attention to either screen and introduce you to Mary MacDonald.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so sorry that I cannot be with you today. COVID-19 continues to keep the border with Nova Scotia closed, but I want you to know that I'm there with you in spirit. It makes me feel wonderful to know that so many people have come to St. John to remember the men lost on that fateful evening. I also want to acknowledge that many people across Canada and the United States are today gathering and are sharing in this event. Thank you all. Also, thank you to the St. John Board of Police Commissioners for all their efforts in making today possible. Mayor Reardon and the City Manager, John Collin, St. John Police Force Acting Chief Tony Hayes, and the St. John Fire Department Chief Kevin Clifford. I also want to express my appreciation to Jim Hennessy, who's Communications Manager with St. John Police Force. He's been so much help. And I also want to say thank you to Daphne Way, the Executive Assistant to St. John Board of Police Commissioners, whose kindness and worth has just been extraordinary through this process. Thank you for all your contributions to this project. I also want to take a minute to thank my own family, who's been so supportive and while I worked on this, and helped me in so many ways that I could never list them all. Thanks, guys. As you know, 44 years to today, the tragic fire occurred that resulted in the loss of the 21 men whose names have been inscribed upon the plaque. They were teenagers, fathers, brothers, sons, husbands, cousins, and friends. Young men, teenagers, honorable veterans, men from every walk of life. Each name represents a life cut short, some which had barely begun, all of which had much living left to do. Each name also represents a family shattered by this fire. I cannot imagine what the families have endured and the pain that it continues to cause. I have had the privilege to speak to many family members as I've worked on this project. Many of you have shared very personal and painful memories of the night of the fire and the following days, and how this has continued to affect your lives. You've also shared with me a lot about how they were like personally, and very fond memories and funny stories about them. I've been very touched by this, and I cannot even begin to adequately express my gratitude to the families. Thank you for choosing to share them with me. Your strength has been incredible and inspiring. It is my hope that the memorial plaque will ensure that the loss of your loved ones is not lost to history, that their names and the events of June 21st, 1977 are remembered by the City of St. John, its citizens, and all who stop to read the plaque. They will truly be never forgotten. Thank you so much for listening.
And again, we thank Mary for all of her efforts. We've been working with her for the past 9 months, and she's been nothing short of a rock through this whole process. So we thank her very much. If we can now direct your attention to this side of the stage, where the velvet black is, we ask Dina Chambers to come to the front. She is the sister of Robert Barton, along with the chair of the St. John Board of Police Commissioners, Mr. Edward Keys, Fire Chief Kevin Clifford, Acting St. John Police Force Chief Tony Hayes, and Her Worship Donna Reardon to come forward to help us unveil the plaques as well. And again, as we've mentioned throughout the process, the plaques will find a permanent home on the second floor of St. John City Hall, not far from where the former detention center was housed. Thank you all very much. There will be a chance for everybody to come forward and get a picture following the ceremony. We do remind everybody to please keep your mask on as you do that. At this time, I would now ask that Monsignor Brian Sheehan please come forward to help us bless both of the plaques. As was mentioned, Monsignor Sheehan and his colleague, Father Begley, worked very closely with first responders that evening and into the early morning, comforting family members and emergency officials. Monsignor?
Let us pray. Oh God, we ask you to bless these plaques, commemorating the tragic event of the fire in the City Hall lockup 44 years ago tonight, on which are inscribed the names of the 21 men who lost their lives that horrific night. We remember that night in the presence of the remaining family members that suffered such painful losses. We have prayed for them. We continue to pray for them in their continued bereavement and mourning. We remember that night in the presence of city officials as well, and provincial representatives who wanted some kind of tangible memorial that these plaques remind us of, that terrible dark moment in our city's history. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord. Let perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls and the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
Thank you, Monsignor. That, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our ceremony. Thank you to everyone, of course, who made this possible, and thank you to all that have come to join us and remember and honor family and friends. Be safe, take care. Like we mentioned, the plaques will be there for anyone who wishes to come up and take a picture. Again, just a reminder to please keep your mask on as you do so. Thank you, and enjoy the remainder of your day.